The winter of 1873 was so bitter in Milwaukee that the air seemed to freeze the breath of anyone who dared to speak. Snow piled up against the red brick buildings of the German quarter. The streets were nearly silent. Only the distant sound of brewery whistles echoed across the frozen lake. In the middle of this cold, a community of immigrants had built a small piece of Bavaria on American soil. But something was growing in their midst that they couldn't explain. They whispered her name in hushed tones, as if speaking too loudly might summon her. Emma Richter. An 11-year-old girl with pale skin and enormous gray eyes that seemed to look right through you. She didn't run and play like the other children. She didn't laugh. She didn't cry. She simply watched, and she counted. Not just numbers, but people. Their footsteps, their habits, their secrets. She saw patterns in everything, and she did not hesitate to tell anyone what she saw. Now, if you're living in 1873, would you believe her gift or fear her? Would you see Emma as a miracle or a curse? Comment below your thoughts and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in the US, Europe, or somewhere else? If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and like this video so you never miss our weekly dark history stories. And share this video with a friend who loves mysteries. Emma Richter was born in 1861 on a harsh Atlantic crossing from Bavaria to America. 3 weeks premature, so small the ship's doctor didn't think she would survive. But survive she did, and she grew into a quiet child with a strange intensity. Her parents, Heinrich and Greta, worked hard to build a new life in Milwaukee. Heinrich, a brewmaster at the Kellner Brewery, Greta taking in laundry and mending by candlelight. Their life was simple, ordinary, but their daughter was not. From the moment she could speak, she seemed to absorb the world in a way no one could understand. By age 4, Emma could repeat conversations she had overheard days earlier. Not just the words, but the tone, the accents, the pauses. She could recite them perfectly. She counted everything. The stitches in her mother's embroidery, the steps from their door to the bakery, the exact time between the brewery whistles marking the beginning and end of each workday. When Heinrich taught her basic arithmetic, she solved problems faster than he could write them down. It wasn't just intelligence, it was obsession, it was precision. The German community initially viewed her as a gift, a blessing, a miracle. But there was also fear. Old Mrs. Brennan crossed herself whenever Emma's pale gray eyes landed on her, and Father Coller, the Catholic priest, once called Emma a child chosen by God. But that was before the winter of 1873, before Emma's abilities turned from a curiosity into something darker. Before the town began to realize she wasn't just observing the world, she was predicting it. The winter of 1872 was especially harsh. Lake Michigan froze solid. The brewery workers huddled around coal stoves. The wives struggled to keep their families warm. And Emma began to watch the neighborhood with an intensity that frightened even her parents. She didn't just notice people, she studied them, she tracked them, she mapped their habits like numbers on a page, and she began to speak about them in a way that adults felt uneasy. She began to notice patterns in human behavior, the way Mr. Kruger walked to the brewery, the way Mrs. Fisher hung her laundry, the way the same people repeated the same actions over and over, as if their lives were a sequence of predictable steps.
Emma began to calculate those patterns, and when she spoke them aloud, it felt like a prophecy. Her parents tried to ignore it, but they couldn't, because the world around them was beginning to shift. The whispers were starting, the fear was growing, and in the next few weeks, Emma's calculations would be the town's worst nightmare.
The first time Emma Richter predicted a death, no one believed her. Her parents did not. Her neighbors did not. Even the priest hesitated. But Emma spoke with the calm certainty of someone stating a simple math problem. And the moment she spoke, the room went cold. It was a gray February morning in 1873. The kind of morning where the sky looks like it has forgotten what color it is. Emma sat at the kitchen table. She ate her breakfast like any other child. Her mother, Greta, prepared Henrik's lunch for the brewery. The house was quiet, but Emma's eyes were not. Her gray eyes fixed on her mother's face. Then she spoke. "Mr. Dietrich will not come home from the brewery today." Greta froze. Her hands trembled. "What do you mean?" she asked. Emma did not look away. "He will die at exactly 14 minutes past 2. Henrik, who had been tying his coat, stopped. He stared at his daughter. He tried to laugh. He tried to dismiss it. But the look in Emma's eyes did not belong to a child. It belonged to someone who had already solved the problem. Greta's voice shook. "Emma, that is a terrible thing to say." Emma answered calmly. "He has been drinking from the small brown bottle for 17 days. Greta almost dropped the tin pail. "How do you know that?" Emma's voice was quiet. "I watched." She spoke like she was reading from a list. "Yesterday he drank 3 times more than usual." Her eyes did not blink. His steps were uneven, 251 instead of his normal 244. Greta's face turned pale. Henrik felt his blood run cold. He looked at his daughter as if she had become a stranger. When people change their patterns by more than 10%, something significant happens within 72 hours. Henrik's hands began to shake. He didn't want to believe it. He didn't want to hear the rest. But Emma continued. "Mr. Dietrich's pattern changed by 12%. The calculation is simple." Henrik's mind raced. He thought of all the men in the brewery, all the drinkers, all the risks. He wanted to say it was nonsense, but the certainty in Emma's voice was impossible to ignore. That afternoon, at 2:14, Jan Dietrich collapsed in the brewery's malt room. The official cause of death was heart failure. The workers said it was alcohol poisoning, but the timing was what haunted them. Emma's prediction had been accurate to the minute. Word spread through the German quarter like a fire. Some people called it coincidence. Some called it a miracle. Some called it a curse. The Richter family became the center of attention. Neighbors began to stare. Whispers followed them through the streets. Children were warned not to play near their house. Even the priest, Father Koller, began to look at Emma with fear. Henrik tried to protect his daughter. He tried to act like it was just a child's imagination. But the truth was, no one could explain what she had done. The next Sunday, after Mass, Henrik approached Father Koller. He needed guidance. He needed a reason. He needed to believe that this was not evil. "Father," Henrik said quietly, "is this a blessing?" The priest looked older than he had the week before. His face was drawn. His eyes were tired. He spoke slowly. "Perhaps the Lord gives us gifts," he said. "But sometimes the devil can twist even the most innocent abilities."
Henrik felt the words hit him like a blow. He had always been a practical man. He brewed beer for a living. He understood science more than faith. But now he could not ignore what had happened. That night, Henrik sat Emma down. He spoke like a father, but he sounded like a man pleading for answers. "Emma," he said quietly, "I must tell you the truth. How could you know about Mr. Dietrich?" Emma looked at her father. Her face remained calm. "I watch," she said. "I count. I remember." Henrik leaned closer. "How could you know his drinking habits?" Emma answered as if it were obvious. "I observe everything, every day, every person, every pattern." Henrik felt a chill. He asked the question that had been haunting him. "Would you like me to tell you about the other calculations I've made?" Emma's eyes flickered. She nodded slightly. Henrik shook his head quickly. He didn't want to hear more. He didn't want to know what else she had calculated. He didn't want to learn what she had seen. But he could not stop her, because Emma had already started seeing the world differently. The next weeks changed everything. The community began to feel her presence, not just as a child, but as a force. Emma began to speak more. Her observations grew more detailed. She began naming things she should not know. She began predicting events that had not happened yet. The first death was not a single coincidence. It was a warning, and the warning was only the beginning. The German quarter became a place of tension. People began to suspect each other. People began to fear the patterns they could not see. Emma continued to sit by the kitchen window. Her eyes tracked every movement, every step, every deviation. She did not know what fear was, or maybe she did, but she did not show it. She simply watched, she counted, she calculated, and the people around her began to understand that the world was not random, it was predictable, and Emma had learned how to read it.
The day after the first prediction came true, the neighborhood changed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, like a shift in the wind. People began to move differently. They stopped walking in their usual paths. They crossed the street to avoid each other. They spoke in whispers, and they stared at the Richter home. Because Emma's name had spread, and with it, the fear. Children were warned not to play near the house. Adults avoided eye contact. Even the brewery workers acted strange. They didn't know what to make of the girl who could predict death. But the worst part was not the fear. It was the attention. Because attention breeds curiosity, and curiosity breeds questions. The questions grew louder. A week after the Dietrich death, a woman named Mrs. Kraus approached the Richter home. She was a widow. Her husband had died in a fire. She was known for being stubborn and sharp-tongued. She had heard the rumors, she had seen the looks, and she wanted to test the girl. She stood at the front door and called out, "Emma!" The girl appeared in the doorway. Her eyes were calm. Her expression was blank. Mrs. Kraus leaned in. She spoke loudly, as if speaking to a child would make the child normal again. "Tell me," she said, "do you know when I will die?" Emma looked at her. She did not flinch. She did not blink. She stared. Then she spoke. "Not soon," she said. Mrs. Kraus's face twisted. "That's not an answer," she snapped. Emma continued, "You will live for 3,285 more days." Mrs. Kraus laughed, a harsh laugh. She shook her head. "That's nonsense." Emma's voice remained steady. "You will die in the year 1882. Mrs. Kraus's smile vanished. She stepped back. Her face went pale. She said nothing more. She turned and walked away. The next morning, Mrs. Kraus collapsed in the street. She died within minutes. The official cause was a stroke,
But the timing was what shocked the town. Emma had predicted the exact year, not the month, not the day, the year. And still, it was enough to send a new wave of panic through the community. The Richter family tried to hide. They tried to protect Emma, but the world had already noticed. The church began to whisper. The police began to question. The neighbors began to talk. And Emma's mother, Greta, started to fear her own child. She began to watch Emma differently. She began to wonder what kind of mind her daughter had. She began to wonder if Emma was dangerous. One night, Greta followed Emma to the kitchen. Emma was sitting at the table, writing numbers on a piece of paper. Greta approached slowly. "Emma," she said softly, "what are you doing?" Emma looked up. She did not stop writing. She spoke without emotion. "I am tracking the patterns," she said. Greta's voice shook. "Patterns of what?" Emma's pencil kept moving. "The people," she said. "Their habits, their lies." Greta stared at the paper. It was filled with rows of numbers, numbers that looked like a code, numbers that looked like a map. Greta tried to understand, but she could not. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Emma stopped writing. She looked at her mother. She spoke slowly. "Because the world is a series of steps," she said. "And if you can predict the steps, you can predict the outcome." Greta's eyes filled with tears. She realized something terrifying. Emma did not just observe. She planned. She calculated. She knew. Greta took Emma's hand. She squeezed it tightly. "Please," she whispered, "please don't tell anyone else." Emma's expression did not change, but her eyes held something cold. "I cannot stop," she said. "Not if I know." Greta pulled her hand away. She felt a pain in her chest, a pain she could not explain. She realized her daughter had become a mirror that showed the future, and that mirror was not kind. The next day, a man named Mr. Fisher came to the Richter home. He was a teacher, a respected man in the community. He was also curious. He wanted to understand Emma. He believed she might be a miracle. He believed she might be proof that God still worked in the world. He asked to speak to Emma alone. Henrik agreed. He was desperate for help. He wanted someone to explain his daughter. Mr. Fisher sat across from Emma at the table. He spoke carefully. He wanted to sound calm, but his voice betrayed him. "Emma," he said, "can you tell me something I don't know?" Emma looked at him. She nodded slightly. "Of course," she said. Mr. Fisher took a deep breath. He asked the question that would change everything. "What is my future?" Emma stared at him. Her eyes seemed to look past him. She spoke softly. "You will lose your job." Mr. Fisher frowned. "That's impossible," he said. "I am a teacher." Emma continued. "You will lose your job because you will be accused of stealing." Mr. Fisher's face turned red. He stood up abruptly. "How dare you?" Emma remained calm. "You will be accused, and you will not be able to prove your innocence." Mr. Fisher stormed out. He went straight to the school board. He demanded an investigation. He accused the community of spreading rumors. He accused the neighbors of jealousy. But nothing could stop the fear, because the fear was no longer about Emma. It was about the future. People began to realize that if Emma was right once, she could be right again. And if she was right again, then the world was no longer safe. The patterns had been exposed. The secrets had been revealed. The town began to change. People began to hide their actions. They began to lie to themselves. They began to avoid any situation that might make Emma notice them. The fear grew, and the fear grew louder. It was not just the community. It was the authorities. The police began to watch the Richter home. They began to question the family. They began to wonder if Emma was involved in something dangerous. Henrik felt trapped. He did not know how to protect his daughter. He did not know how to stop the world from watching. He did not know how to stop Emma from calculating. Because Emma had already learned something no one else could. The world was not random. It was predictable. And Emma had found the key.
The day the police arrived, the Richter home felt different. The air felt heavy. The walls felt closer. Henrik stood at the door with a stiff face. He tried to look normal, but his hands trembled. A police officer knocked. The officer's boots were loud on the wooden porch. Henrik opened the door. The officer introduced himself. He said he was investigating the rumors. He said he wanted to ask questions. Henrik tried to remain calm. He invited the officer inside. The officer looked around the house. He noticed the numbers on the table, the papers, the scribbles. He noticed the silence. He noticed Emma. The officer's eyes narrowed. He looked at Emma like she was a secret. He spoke to Henrik. "Your daughter has been saying things," he said. "Things that cannot be explained." Henrik swallowed. He tried to speak, but the officer continued. "We need to know where she learned this." Henrik's voice was quiet. "She learned it from herself," he said. The officer frowned. He asked Emma to speak. Emma looked at him. Her eyes were calm. She did not show fear. She did not show emotion. She spoke clearly. "I know patterns," she said. "I know numbers." The officer stared. He felt a chill. He asked Emma a question. "What do you know about the fire at the bakery?" Emma looked at him. She smiled slightly. She answered without hesitation. "The bakery fire was started by Mr. Krause," she said. The officer froze. Mr. Krause was a respected man. He owned the bakery. He was known for his kindness. He was known for helping the community. But Emma had accused him, and the officer could not ignore the accusation. He asked Emma to explain. Emma did not hesitate. She described the exact moment the fire began. She described the pattern of smoke. She described the smell of kerosene. She described the way Mr. Krause moved. She described the way he had changed his habits. She described the way he had been acting differently for weeks. The officer listened. He did not believe at first, but the details were too accurate, too precise, too real. The officer left. He promised to investigate, but he did not return. He was afraid. He was not a superstitious man, but he had heard enough, and he had seen enough. He did not want to be connected to a girl who could predict the future. The next day, the bakery caught fire again. This time, the fire was bigger. It destroyed half the building. The town was shaken. People were terrified. They began to believe Emma was not just a child. They believed she was a messenger, a warning, or something worse. The police began to search for Mr. Krause. They questioned him. They searched his home. They found nothing. No evidence. No motive. But the community was already convinced. The suspicion spread like a disease, and Emma's name became a curse. The more people feared her, the more they tried to avoid her. The more they avoided her, the more she became a symbol of truth, a symbol of the future. Henrik and Greta tried to leave Milwaukee. They tried to start a new life. They packed their belongings. They planned to move to another town. But Emma refused. She stood in the doorway. She looked at her parents. She spoke softly. "We cannot leave," she said. Henrik stared. "Why?" he asked. Emma's eyes were cold. "Because the patterns follow us," she said.
They follow everyone. Henrik felt his heart sink. He realized Emma was not only a gift, she was a burden, a dangerous burden. Greta began to cry. She held Emma's shoulders. She begged her. "Please," she whispered, "just stop." Emma looked at her mother. Her voice was quiet. "I cannot stop," she said. "I know too much." The family decided to stay. They tried to live a quiet life, but quiet was impossible. The town's fear had turned into obsession. People began to come to the Richter home. They wanted answers. They wanted to know what would happen next. They wanted to know if they could avoid their fate. They wanted to know if Emma could predict their lives. Some came with hope. Some came with hatred. Some came with weapons. One day, a man named Jakob Muller arrived. He was a merchant. He was known for his wealth. He was known for his influence. He was also known for his cruelty. He had heard about Emma. He wanted to test her. He wanted to prove she was a fraud. He wanted to make her suffer. He walked into the Richter home with a confident smile. He looked at Emma. He spoke loudly. "Tell me," he said, "will I be rich forever?" Emma looked at him. Her eyes were blank. She did not smile. She spoke slowly. "You will be rich, but you will lose everything you have ever owned." Jakob laughed. He mocked her. He said she was a liar. He said she was a fool. He threatened her. He raised his voice. He said he would make her pay for her lies. Emma did not flinch. She looked at him with the calm of someone who already knew his future. Then she spoke. "You will die in a room full of strangers. You will die alone." Jakob's face turned pale. He tried to laugh again, but the laughter failed. He left the house quickly. That night, Jakob Muller was found dead in his own store. His body was discovered by a passerby. No one saw how he died. No one knew why. But the fear returned. The town became even more terrified. People began to whisper that Emma was cursed, that she was a witch, that she had made a deal with the devil. The church began to speak openly. They called Emma dangerous. They called her evil. The community began to turn against her. The fear turned into hatred. The hatred turned into violence, and the Richter family realized they were no longer safe. They were trapped in a world that had become too small, a world that had become too dark. And Emma, the girl who counted everything, continued to watch. She continued to calculate. She continued to predict, because she could not stop. Not if she knew.
The winter of 1873 had already become a season of fear, but now the fear was turning into anger. The community had begun to see Emma as a threat, not a gift, a threat. People stopped visiting the Richter home. They stopped offering help. They stopped bringing food. They began to whisper behind closed doors. And then the threats began. Letters arrived, anonymous notes. They were simple, short, and cruel. "Stop the counting. Tell the truth. Leave before you die." Henrik tried to ignore them. Greta burned the letters, but the fear was already inside them. Emma sensed it. She felt the tension. She felt the anger. She felt the eyes watching, and she began to withdraw. She stopped talking to strangers. She stopped looking at people directly. She started spending more time alone, in the dark, in her room, in her mind. The town had become a trap, and Emma was trapped inside it. Then, one night, the Richter home was broken into. The door was kicked open. The windows were shattered. Someone had come with violence in their heart. Henrik woke up to shouting. He grabbed a lamp. He ran toward the noise. Greta screamed. Emma was nowhere to be found.
The house was in chaos, furniture overturned, the kitchen table destroyed, the papers scattered. Hinrich ran outside. He saw the street filled with men, their faces twisted with anger, their hands holding torches, their eyes full of hate. He saw them moving like a pack. He realized they were not just there to scare them. They were there to take something. They were there to take Emma. He shouted for her. He searched the house. He searched the yard. He searched the alley. But she was gone. The men found nothing. They returned to the street. They shouted. They cursed. And then they vanished into the night. The next morning, Emma returned. She walked in quietly, as if nothing had happened. Her eyes were tired. Her face was pale. She did not speak. Hinrich ran to her. He grabbed her arms. He shook her. "Where were you?" he demanded. Emma looked at him calmly. "I went to the church," she said. Hinrich's voice rose. "Why?" Emma's eyes did not shift. "I went to ask for help," she said. Hinrich stared. He could not believe what he was hearing. "You went to the church?" he asked. Emma nodded. She spoke slowly. "I asked the priest to help me." Hinrich's voice broke. "You asked Father Collar?" Emma nodded again. Hinrich looked like he wanted to collapse. He had hoped the church would protect them, but the church had been the source of their fear. The church had been the source of their judgment. He had hoped the church would save them, but he feared the church might destroy them. Emma continued. "He told me I was a gift," she said. "He told me I was a curse." Hinrich's heart sank. He looked at his daughter. He realized the church was not a safe place, not anymore. And then Emma spoke again. "She told me to leave," she said. "Father Collar told me to leave." Hinrich's voice shook. "Why?" Emma's voice was quiet. "Because people are afraid. They are afraid of what they don't understand." Hinrich felt anger rise. He felt helplessness. He felt a deep sadness. He realized the town would never accept her. Not now, not ever. And that is when he made a decision. He decided to take Emma away, to leave Milwaukee, to start over, to escape the fear. But Emma refused again. She stood still. Her eyes were cold. "I cannot leave," she said. Hinrich's voice grew louder. "You cannot stay here either." Emma looked at him. She spoke with quiet certainty. "Leaving does not change the patterns. The patterns follow us." Hinrich's face went pale. He realized something terrifying. Emma was not only predicting events, she was predicting their movements. She was predicting their fate, and that meant they could never truly escape. If you were living in 1873, would you protect Emma or turn her in? Would you believe her gift or fear it? Comment below your thoughts and tell us where you're watching from. Do you think the town is right to fear her? If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. It helps the channel grow, and it helps us bring more dark history stories every week. The next days were filled with paranoia. The town became a place of suspicion. Neighbors stopped trusting each other. Every strange noise became a warning. Every glance became a threat. Emma began to feel the weight of the world. She began to understand what she had become, a symbol, a warning, a monster. She began to wonder if her gift was truly a gift or a curse. And in the middle of all this fear, the first true tragedy happened. A child disappeared. No one knew where, no one knew why, no one knew what happened. The town searched. They called the police. They asked Emma for help, and Emma did not hesitate. She walked through the streets. She watched. She counted. She followed the patterns, and she found the child.
But what she discovered changed everything, because the child was not lost. The child was taken by someone the town trusted, someone they never suspected, someone who had been hiding in plain sight. Emma knew the truth, but when she spoke it aloud, no one believed her, because the truth was too ugly, too terrifying, too impossible. And that was when the town realized something. Emma did not just predict the future, she exposed it. And when the future was exposed, the town began to panic. They began to turn on each other. They began to accuse. They began to blame. And the Richter family realized they were no longer safe. They were trapped in a world that had become too dark. And the next chapter would reveal the true horror of what Emma had become.
The town was no longer just afraid of Emma. They were afraid of what she might reveal next. And the fear was turning into chaos. People began to lock their doors. They stopped walking alone. They stopped trusting strangers. They stopped trusting friends, because Emma had shown them something. That the world was not random. That patterns existed. That fate could be seen, and that meant everyone was vulnerable. The day the child was found, the town became even more unstable. The child had been taken by a man named Herr Vogel. He was a respected merchant. He was known for his wealth. He was known for his generosity. No one suspected him, but Emma did. Emma had watched his patterns. She had watched his steps. She had watched his habits. She had watched his lies. And she had seen what the others could not see. She had seen the truth. She had seen the pattern that led to the child. The police were shocked. They had never suspected Herr Vogel. They had never suspected someone so trusted. But Emma's words were too accurate, too specific, too detailed. Herr Vogel was arrested. The town celebrated. They thought the nightmare was over. They thought the danger was gone. But the truth was far more frightening, because the child was not the only one taken. There were others. There were more missing children, more missing adults, more missing people. And the town had been blind to it, because the town had been too busy believing in Emma. They had been too busy fearing her. They had not noticed the real danger hiding in plain sight. The town was finally waking up, but it was waking up too late, because the patterns had already started, and the patterns were not ending. The missing people were not random. They were connected. They were linked by a single thread, a thread that only Emma could see. Emma began to write. She wrote in a notebook. She wrote in the dark. She wrote late at night. She wrote the patterns of the missing. She wrote the connections. She wrote the names. She wrote the dates. She wrote the locations. She wrote the movements. And she began to see something terrifying. The missing people were being taken in a sequence that followed a path through the town, a path that led to a place no one had visited in years, an abandoned building, a former factory, a place that had been closed for decades, a place that was now being used again. The town was too scared to go there, but Emma knew she had to. She knew the pattern would not stop. She knew the pattern would lead to more deaths. She knew the pattern would lead to more missing people, and she knew she was the only one who could stop it. Henrik refused to let her go. He begged her. He pleaded. He said she was a child. He said she was not strong enough. He said she was not safe. But Emma was not listening. She had become something else. She had become a force. She had become a mind that could not stop. She had become a machine, and she knew the machine had to keep moving. So she went. She went to the abandoned factory alone. The building was dark. The air was thick. The floor was cold. The walls were covered in old soot.
The windows were broken. The place smelled like decay. Emma walked slowly. She listened, she watched, she counted, and then she saw it. A symbol, a mark, a sign, a number etched into the wall. It was a pattern, a code, a sequence. Emma recognized it immediately. It was the same pattern she had been tracking, the same pattern that connected the missing people. She followed the symbol deeper into the factory. She walked down a hallway. She turned left. She turned right. She walked through rooms filled with old machinery. She followed the pattern like a trail. And then she heard a sound, a faint sound, a whisper, a child crying. Emma's heart did not race. Her face did not change, but her eyes widened slightly. She knew she had found the source. She followed the sound. She walked into a small room. The room was dark. The only light came from a broken window. The child was there. The child was alive, but the child was terrified. The child looked at Emma, and Emma looked back. The child's eyes were filled with fear, but Emma's eyes were calm. Emma spoke softly. "It's okay," she said. "You are safe now." The child did not believe her. The child shook. The child whispered, "Who are you?" Emma answered quietly, "I am the one who saw the pattern. I am the one who found you." The child's eyes widened. "Can you stop it?" the child asked. Emma looked at the child. She spoke with a quiet certainty. "I can try, but the pattern is bigger than you and me." The child began to cry again. Emma looked around. She noticed something else, another symbol, another mark, another code. It was not just a pattern, it was a message left by the person who was taking the people, a message for someone else, a message for someone who understood numbers, someone like Emma. Emma realized the danger was not just the kidnapper, it was someone else, someone who was watching, someone who was controlling the pattern, someone who wanted Emma to follow, someone who wanted her to find the truth, and now Emma had found it. The truth was not a gift, the truth was a trap. Emma knew she had to get out. She had to take the child and run. She had to warn the town. But the factory was not empty. She heard footsteps. She heard voices. She heard someone approaching. Emma grabbed the child. She ran. She ran through the dark halls. She ran through the broken windows. She ran into the night. The cold air hit her face. She ran as fast as she could. She ran back toward the Richter home. She did not stop. She did not look back, because the pattern would follow her, and the pattern would not stop. The town would soon know the truth. The question was, would they believe her, or would they blame her?
Emma ran through the snow-covered streets. The cold burned her lungs. The child in her arms was shaking. The child's eyes were wide with terror. Emma kept moving. She did not stop. She did not slow down. She had to reach home. She had to warn her parents. She had to warn the town. She had to reveal the truth. The pattern had led her to the factory, and now she knew the danger was real. She knew the pattern was being controlled. She knew someone was watching. She knew someone wanted her to find the missing people. She knew someone wanted her to follow the path. She knew someone wanted her to solve the code. Emma reached the Richter home. She burst through the door. Hinrich and Greta were inside. They were waiting. They were afraid. They saw the child. They saw Emma's face. They saw the terror in her eyes. Hinrich grabbed the child. He hugged the child tightly. Greta held Emma's shoulders. She looked into her daughter's eyes. "What happened?" she asked. Emma spoke quickly. "The missing people," she said. "They are being taken." Greta's face turned pale. Hinrich's eyes widened. Emma continued. "There is a pattern," she said. A sequence. There is a code, and someone is using it. Heinrich stared at her. He did not understand. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to say it was impossible. But Emma's eyes were too calm. Her voice was too certain. He knew she was telling the truth. Greta began to cry. She turned to the child. She whispered softly. "It's okay," she said. "You are safe." The child shook. The child's voice was small. "Who are you?" the child asked again. Emma answered quietly. "I'm the one who saw the pattern," she said. The child's eyes filled with confusion. "What pattern?" the child asked. Emma looked at the child. She spoke softly. "The pattern of the missing," she said. "The pattern that led to this place." The child stared at her. Then the child began to whisper. "There was a man," the child said. "A man with a long coat. A man with a mask. He said I was special. He said I could help him." The child's voice shook. Emma's face remained calm, but inside her mind raced. The pattern was bigger than she had thought. The pattern was not just about the missing. It was about something else, something deeper, something darker. Emma sat down at the table. She pulled out her notebook. She opened it. The pages were filled with numbers. She had been writing the patterns. She had been writing the connections. She had been writing the codes. Heinrich looked at the notebook. He felt his stomach turn. He realized his daughter had been tracking the town's secrets. He realized the town had been hiding something. He realized the missing people were not random. They were part of a larger plan. Greta looked at the notebook. She whispered. "What does it mean?" she asked. Emma looked at her parents. She spoke slowly. "It means someone is controlling the pattern," she said. "It means someone is choosing who disappears. It means someone is using the town." Heinrich's face grew hard. He stood up. He grabbed his coat. He looked at Emma. "I am going to the police," he said. "I am going to tell them everything." Greta shook her head. "No," she said, "we cannot trust the police. They are already afraid of Emma. They might blame her." Heinrich's voice grew louder. "We cannot stay silent. We cannot let people disappear." Emma looked at them both. She spoke quietly. "I will go with you." Heinrich's eyes widened. "You will not," he said. "You are a child." Emma's voice was calm. "I am not a child anymore. I am the one who sees." Heinrich felt a wave of fear. He realized he could not control his daughter. He realized he could not protect her. He realized he had to trust her. And so they went to the police. They went to the station. The police listened. They looked at Emma with suspicion. They looked at Heinrich with doubt. The officer in charge was a man named Officer Bauer. He was not easily impressed. He was practical. He was a man who believed in facts. He believed in evidence. He did not believe in children with strange abilities. He did not believe in patterns. He did not believe in prophecy. But he listened. He listened because Heinrich was desperate. He listened because the town was terrified. He listened because the missing people were real. Emma spoke. She explained the pattern. She explained the code. She explained the symbols. She explained the sequence. Officer Bauer looked at her. He asked a question. "Can you prove it?" he asked. Emma nodded. She opened her notebook. She showed him the numbers. She showed him the symbols. She showed him the connections. Officer Bauer studied the pages. He frowned. He looked at Heinrich. He looked at Emma. He asked again. "Who is doing this?" he asked. Emma's eyes remained calm. She spoke softly. "I don't know," she said, "but the pattern leads to the church." Officer Bauer's face changed. He became serious. He stood up. He grabbed his coat. He looked at Emma. He looked at Heinrich. He said, "We are going to the church." Heinrich felt his heart pound. He felt a fear that he had never felt before, because the church was the one place he thought would protect them. The church was the one place he thought would save them.
But now the church might be the source of the danger, and Emma, the girl who counted everything, was about to reveal the truth.
The church looked calm, but the silence felt wrong. The pews were empty, the candles were lit. The air smelled of wax and old wood. Officer Bauer walked slowly. Henrik followed. Greta stayed behind for a moment. She watched Emma. Emma stood still. She stared at the church door. She could feel the pattern. She could feel the code. She could feel the danger. Officer Bauer stepped into the sanctuary. He looked around. He tried to appear brave, but his eyes betrayed him. He had seen too many strange things lately. He had heard too many rumors. He had heard about Emma. He had heard about the missing. He had heard about the deaths. He had heard about the journal. He had heard about the numbers. He had heard enough. He had come to the church to find the truth. Emma walked ahead. She moved with a strange calm. Her footsteps were quiet. Her eyes scanned the room. She counted. She measured. She observed. She calculated. She knew something was hidden here. She knew the pattern. She knew the sequence. She knew the code. She stopped near the altar. She stared at the cross. She stared at the candles. She stared at the floor. She saw something, a mark, a symbol, a number. It was hidden, but Emma saw it. She knelt down. She ran her fingers over the mark. Her face remained calm, but inside her mind raced. She had found the first piece. She had found the first clue. Officer Bauer watched her. He felt uneasy. He did not like the idea of a child finding secret marks in a church. He did not like the idea of the church being involved. He looked toward the priest's office. He saw a door. He saw a shadow. He saw movement. Someone was inside. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. Officer Bauer moved toward the door. He reached for the handle. He stopped. He looked at Emma. Emma looked back. She nodded. He opened the door. The room was small. It smelled of old books. It smelled of ink. It smelled of secrets. There was a desk. There was a chair. There was a lamp. And there was a man, Father Collar, the priest. He looked older than before. He looked tired. He looked afraid. He looked guilty. Officer Bauer stepped inside. He spoke with authority. "Father," he said, "we need to talk." Father Collar looked at Emma. His eyes narrowed. He looked at her like she was a threat. He looked at her like she was a problem. He said, "This is a church. This is a place of God. You cannot bring your fears here." Officer Bauer ignored him. He held up Emma's notebook. He said, "This child has information. This child has evidence. This child has a pattern." Father Collar's face hardened. He took a step closer. He said, "You should not be here. You should not be asking these questions." Henrik stepped forward. He said, "Father, my daughter has been warning us. She has been telling the truth." Father Collar's voice changed. It became sharp. It became cold. He said, "You should be careful. You should not trust a child who sees too much." Emma spoke. Her voice was calm. Her tone was flat. She said, "You know the pattern." Father Collar froze. He did not expect her to say that. He did not expect her to know. He tried to hide his fear. He tried to hide his guilt. But Emma had already seen it. She had already calculated it. She had already predicted it. Father Collar swallowed. He said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Emma shook her head. She said, "You do. You have been meeting with the men. You have been helping them. You have been covering their tracks." Father Collar's face went pale. He stepped back. He whispered,
No. Emma continued. The pattern shows your steps, she said, your visits, your purchases, your changes in behavior. I calculated your involvement. Father Collar's eyes filled with anger. He lunged toward Emma. He grabbed her arm. He squeezed. Emma did not flinch. She stared at him. She spoke slowly. "Let go," she said. Father Collar released her. His hands shook. He looked at the notebook. He looked at the numbers. He looked at Emma. He knew the truth was out. He knew the pattern was broken. He knew the secret was exposed. He knew the men would come. He knew they would not forgive. He knew they would not stop. He knew they would kill. Officer Bauer stepped in. He put himself between the priest and Emma. He said, "Father Collar, you are under suspicion." Father Collar laughed. It was a short laugh. It was a bitter laugh. He said, "You think you can stop it? You think you can stop what is coming?" Officer Bauer's voice was firm. He said, "I will try." Father Collar's eyes went cold. He said, "Then you will fail." Then he turned away. He walked toward the altar. He bowed his head. He whispered something, a prayer, or a curse, or a warning. Officer Bauer watched him. He felt a chill. He felt the weight of the church. He felt the weight of the secret. He felt the weight of the pattern. He looked at Emma. He looked at Hinrich. He said, "We need to leave." Hinrich nodded. They left the church. The cold air hit them. It felt like a slap. They walked quickly. They did not look back. They did not speak. They did not breathe. They were afraid. They were terrified, because the church had been involved, and the pattern had been broken, and now the men would know, and now the men would come, and now the night would be dangerous. If you were living in 1873, would you trust a priest who suddenly becomes suspicious, or would you fear the church itself? Comment below your thoughts and tell us where you're watching from. If you're enjoying this story, hit like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us bring more chilling historical mysteries every week.
The night was darker than usual. The wind howled through the streets. Snow swirled like ash. Emma walked beside her father. Her eyes scanned every shadow. Her mind was already calculating. The pattern had shifted. The pattern had changed. The danger was closer. Hinrich held Emma's hand tightly. He did not want to let go. He did not want to lose her. Greta walked behind them. She kept looking over her shoulder. She kept expecting someone to appear. She kept expecting the men to come. They reached the house. The door was closed, but the lock was broken. Someone had been inside. Someone had searched the house. Someone had looked for the notebook. Someone had looked for Emma. Emma stopped. She stared at the broken lock. She whispered, "They were here." Hinrich felt a cold dread. He said, "They must have been watching." Greta's voice trembled. "Why didn't they take anything?" she asked. Emma answered calmly. "They were looking for the notebook," she said. "They were looking for my patterns. They were looking for my numbers." Hinrich stepped inside. He looked around. The house was untouched, but the air felt wrong. The silence felt heavy. Emma walked to her room. She opened her closet. She pulled out her journal. It was still there. Her notebook was still safe. She hugged it tightly. She held it like a lifeline. Hinrich stared at her. He whispered, "You must stop." Emma looked up. Her eyes were calm. She said, "I cannot stop." Hinrich shook his head. "You must," he said. "Your life depends on it." Emma nodded, but her eyes did not change. Her mind did not stop. Her calculations continued.
She turned the pages, she studied the numbers, she studied the patterns, she studied the code. She realized something. The men were not only after her, they were after the truth. They were after the evidence. They were afraid of exposure. They were afraid of being caught. They were afraid of losing everything. Emma looked up. She said, "They will come tonight." Greta gasped. Henrik froze. He asked, "How do you know?" Emma replied, "The pattern shows it. The pattern shows the time. The pattern shows the place. The pattern shows the method." Henrik's voice dropped. "What is the method?" he asked. Emma's eyes remained calm. She said, "They will come through the back. They will come when the wind changes. They will come when the street is quiet. They will come when the lights go out." Greta's hands trembled. She whispered, "What do we do?" Emma closed her notebook. She looked at her parents. She said, "We leave." Henrik shook his head. "We cannot leave," he said. "We have nowhere to go." Emma stared at him. She said, "We can go to Dr. Mueller." Greta's eyes widened. "Dr. Mueller?" she asked. Henrik nodded slowly. "He can help," he said. "He has connections. He has resources. He has the means to protect us." Emma's voice was calm. "Then we go," she said. They packed quickly. They took only what they needed. They took the notebook. They took food. They took warm clothes. They took their lives. They left through the back door. They walked through the dark streets. They moved quietly. They did not speak. They did not breathe. They did not look back. The snow covered their tracks. The wind swallowed their footsteps. They reached Dr. Mueller's office. The door was locked. Emma knocked softly. No answer. Dr. Mueller knocked harder. Still no answer. They waited. They listened. The silence was thick. Finally, the door opened. Dr. Mueller appeared. His face was pale. His eyes were wide. He looked terrified. He stepped back. He whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Henrik said, "We need help." Dr. Mueller stared at Emma. He said, "Your daughter has become dangerous." Emma's eyes remained calm. She replied, "I am not dangerous. I am only telling the truth." Dr. Mueller's voice cracked. He said, "The truth is a weapon." Henrik stepped forward. "We need protection." Dr. Mueller sighed. He looked at the notebook. He looked at the numbers. He looked at Emma. He said, "You are not safe here, not in Milwaukee, not anywhere in this town." He paused. He whispered, "I can help you, but it will not be easy." Henrik asked, "What do we do?" Dr. Mueller said, "We leave. We leave now. We go to the river. We take the boat. We cross the lake." Emma nodded. She knew the pattern. She knew the risks. She knew the cost. Greta asked, "Can we trust you?" Dr. Mueller looked at her. He said, "You must trust me, or you will die." Henrik nodded slowly. They followed him. They moved through the dark. They crossed the river. They reached the boat. They climbed aboard. Dr. Mueller rowed. The water was cold. The air was sharp. The night was silent. The boat cut through the dark. They were escaping. They were running. They were fleeing. But the men would not stop. The men would not forget. The men would not forgive. And the pattern would continue.
The lake looked like black glass. The moon was a thin slice. The boat moved quietly. The water made no sound. It was as if the world had stopped. Emma sat in the boat. Her eyes stared at the horizon. Her mind continued to calculate. She counted the waves. She counted the wind. She counted the distance. She calculated the time. She calculated the risk. She calculated the chance of being caught. Henrik sat beside her. He stared at the water. He could not relax. He could not breathe.
He kept thinking about the church. He kept thinking about the priest. He kept thinking about the men. He kept thinking about the notebook. Greta sat at the back. She hugged herself. She tried to keep warm. She tried to keep her mind from breaking. Dr. Mueller rode. He rode fast. He rode hard. He did not look back. He did not speak. He was focused. He was serious. He was afraid. He knew the men were not far behind. He knew the men would come. He knew the men would not stop. The boat reached the far shore. The snow was deeper here. The air was colder. The wind was harsher. They climbed out. They ran into the trees. They moved quickly. They moved silently. They followed Dr. Mueller. They followed the path he knew. They reached a small cabin. It was hidden. It was secluded. It was far from the town. Dr. Mueller opened the door. He stepped inside. He lit a lantern. The cabin was small. It smelled of wood. It smelled of smoke. It smelled of secrecy. He turned to them. He said, "You will be safe here." Hinrich nodded. Greta's eyes filled with tears. Emma looked around. She saw the walls. She saw the maps. She saw the papers. She saw the numbers. She knew Dr. Mueller had been planning this. She knew he had been preparing for this. She knew he had been expecting them. Dr. Mueller spoke quietly. "I have contacts," he said. "I can get you away, but you must be careful." Hinrich asked, "How long?" Dr. Mueller said, "Long enough. Long enough for the men to forget. Long enough for the investigation to begin. Long enough for you to disappear." Emma spoke. Her voice was calm. She said, "I will not disappear," she said. Hinrich looked at her. He asked, "What do you mean?" Emma replied, "I will not hide. I will not run forever. I will use the notebook. I will use the pattern. I will expose them." Greta gasped. Hinrich shook his head. "You cannot," he said. "They will kill you." Emma's eyes stayed calm. She said, "They already tried. They already came. They already searched our home. They already know I am the threat. Running will not stop them. Only the truth will." Dr. Mueller looked at her. He frowned. He said, "The truth is dangerous." Emma nodded. She said, "I know." Hinrich spoke softly. "What do we do?" he asked. Emma opened the notebook. She pointed to a page. She said, "We need to follow the pattern. We need to trace the meetings. We need to identify the men. We need to gather proof." Greta's voice was small. "Can we do it?" she asked. Emma nodded. "Yes," she said, "we can." Dr. Mueller sighed. He said, "It will take time. It will take planning. It will take courage." He paused. He looked at Emma. He said, "You are not a child anymore. You are a weapon." Emma looked down. She whispered, "I am just a mind." Hinrich's voice shook. "Your mind is a danger," he said. Emma nodded. She said, "Yes." Then she spoke again, "But it is also a way to stop them." Dr. Mueller stepped closer. He placed his hand on the notebook. He said, "If we expose them, they will come after you. They will come after your family. They will come after everyone who helps you." Emma's eyes remained calm. She said, "Then we will have to be smarter. We will have to be faster. We will have to be more careful." Hinrich looked at the cabin walls. He realized they were not safe. He realized the danger had followed them. He realized the men would not stop. He realized the pattern was still moving. He realized the night was not over. And somewhere in the dark, the men were planning. They were waiting. They were watching. They were calculating.
The cabin felt safe, but safety was an illusion. Emma knew that. Hinrich knew that. Greta knew that. Dr. Mueller knew that. The fire crackled. The lantern flickered. The shadows danced. The wind outside howled like a beast.
Emma sat at the table. She opened the notebook. She began to trace the pattern. She studied the names. She studied the dates. She studied the places. She looked for a connection. She looked for the hidden thread. She found it. The names formed a shape, a web, a network, not just a group, a whole system, a chain of power, a chain of control, a chain of silence. Emma whispered, "It's bigger than we thought." Hinrich's face turned pale. He asked, "How big?" Emma replied, "It reaches the church. It reaches the mayor. It reaches the police. It reaches the men who came to our house." Greta's eyes widened. She whispered, "They are everywhere." Dr. Mueller nodded slowly. He said, "Yes, they are everywhere, and they will not stop." Emma closed the notebook. She looked at her father. She said, "We need proof." Hinrich asked, "How?" Emma answered, "We need someone to witness. We need someone who knows. We need someone who saw." Greta spoke softly. "What about the priest?" she asked. Emma shook her head. "No," she said, "he is part of it." Hinrich whispered, "What about the woman at the market?" Emma paused. She thought. She said, "Maybe." Dr. Mueller spoke. "There is someone," he said. "There is a man who once worked for them. He left the network. He escaped. He is hiding." Emma looked up. "Where?" she asked. Dr. Mueller hesitated. He looked around the cabin. He lowered his voice. "He is in the forest," he said. "He lives in an old cabin. He is a hunter. He knows the land. He knows how to survive." Hinrich asked, "Can we trust him?" Dr. Mueller's voice was heavy. "He is the only one who can help," he said, "but he is dangerous." Greta asked, "Why?" Dr. Mueller said, "Because he knows too much. He has seen too much. He has lost too much." Emma stood up. She said, "We have to find him." Hinrich looked at her. He asked, "Are you sure?" Emma nodded. "Yes," she said, "we have no choice." Dr. Mueller grabbed his coat. He said, "We leave at dawn." He looked at the notebook. He said, "We take only what we need." He said, "We move fast." He said, "We cannot be seen." They waited through the night. The wind continued to howl. The fire continued to crackle. The shadows continued to move, and the men continued to watch. Emma could feel it. She could feel their eyes. She could feel their attention. She could feel their focus. She could feel the pattern tightening. At dawn they left. They walked through the snow. They followed Dr. Mueller. They moved through the trees. The forest was thick. The branches scratched their faces. The snow made their boots heavy. The cold bit their skin. They kept going. They kept moving. They kept silent. They reached the old cabin. It was hidden behind trees. It looked abandoned. It looked forgotten. Dr. Mueller knocked. No answer. He knocked again. A voice came from inside. "Who is there?" Dr. Mueller spoke softly. "It's me," he said. The door opened. A man stood there. His face was weathered. His eyes were sharp. He looked like he had seen death. He looked like he had survived it. He stared at Emma. He said, "You're the girl with the notebook." Emma nodded. He stepped aside. He let them in. The cabin was small. It was filled with traps. It was filled with weapons. It was filled with supplies. It was filled with maps. The man spoke. His voice was rough. "I'm Jonas," he said. "I used to work for them. I used to be part of the network. I left, and they tried to kill me." Hinrich asked, "Can we trust him?" Jonas stared at Emma. He said, "You're dangerous."
Emma replied, "So are they." Jonas nodded slowly. He said, "I can help, but you must listen. You must follow my rules." Greta asked, "What are the rules?" Jonas said, "No one leaves this cabin alone. No one speaks about this outside, and no one trusts anyone." Emma looked at him. She asked, "What do you know?" Jonas's eyes narrowed. He said, "I know where they meet. I know where they plan. I know where they hide their secrets." He paused. He said, "And I know how to expose them." Emma leaned in. She whispered, "Tell me." Jonas looked at the notebook. He said, "Your pattern is right. It is accurate, but you need more. You need proof." He pointed to a map. He said, "They meet here, in a town north of here. They call it the Winter Market. They gather there once a month. They trade favors. They trade secrets. They trade people." Emma's eyes widened. She whispered, "We must go." Jonas nodded. He said, "Yes, but it will be dangerous, because the market is watched, and the market is controlled." Henrik asked, "How do we get in?" Jonas replied, "We go as travelers. We go as merchants. We go as strangers." Emma's voice was calm. "We will blend in. We will observe. We will gather proof, and we will expose them." Jonas stared at Emma. He said, "You're braver than you should be." Emma replied, "Bravery is the only option." Jonas sighed. He said, "Then we prepare." They packed, they planned, they waited, and the network continued to move. The web continued to tighten. The night continued to watch, and Emma's notebook continued to burn with secrets.
They left the cabin at dusk. The forest swallowed them. The path was narrow. The snow was deep. The air felt heavier. Every sound was louder. Every crack of a branch was a warning. Emma walked beside Jonas. She watched him closely. He moved like a hunted animal. He knew the land. He knew the dangers. He knew the hidden trails. Greta walked behind. She kept her eyes on the trees. She kept imagining men hiding. Henrik stayed close to Emma. He kept holding her hand. He could not let go. He could not let fear win. The night grew darker. They reached a small village. It looked empty. It looked abandoned, but it was not. They entered the inn. The inn was warm. The inn smelled of smoke. The inn smelled of old beer. The inn smelled of secrets. A fire burned in the corner. A man sat at the bar. He watched them. He did not speak. Jonas approached him. They spoke quietly. Emma listened. She could not understand their words, but she understood the tone. The tone was tense. The tone was careful. The tone was dangerous. Jonas turned to them. He said, "We have to be careful." Henrik asked, "Are we safe here?" Jonas shook his head. "No," he said, "not safe." He pointed to the bar. He said, "He is one of them." Emma's heart dropped. Greta whispered, "How do you know?" Jonas replied, "Because he is watching. He is always watching. He is always listening." He said, "We need to move." They left the inn. They moved through the village. They kept their heads low. They kept their faces hidden. They kept their voices silent. They reached the market road. The road was narrow. The road was lined with stalls. The stalls were closed. The town was quiet. Too quiet. Emma felt the tension. She felt the eyes. She felt the danger. Jonas stopped. He looked around. He whispered, "We are being followed." Henrik froze. Greta gasped. Emma turned. She saw a shadow. A man in a dark coat. He was far away, but he was watching. He was waiting. He was patient. Emma's voice was calm. "He's not alone," she said. Jonas nodded. He said, "No, they always come in groups." He whispered, "They are not just men. They are the network. They are the web. They are the chain."
Henrik's voice shook. "What do we do?" he asked. Jonas said, "We split." Emma looked at him. She asked, "Split how?" Jonas replied, "You and your parents go to the market. I will lead them away." Emma's eyes widened. "No," she said, "you can't." Jonas looked at her. He said, "I have been running for years. They will not catch me. They will catch you. They will use you." Emma's voice was quiet. "Then I will not go alone," she said. Henrik spoke, "We will go together." Greta nodded. Jonas sighed. He said, "Fine. We split in the market. We meet at the old church." He pointed. He said, "You know it." Emma nodded. She knew the place. She had seen it in the notebook. She had seen it in the pattern. She knew the way. They moved forward. The market was still quiet. The stalls were closed. The snow covered everything. The air was cold. Emma felt the fear. She felt the dread. She felt the silence. They entered the square. The square was empty, but it did not feel empty. It felt watched. It felt controlled. Emma whispered, "This is wrong." Henrik said, "Where is everyone?" Greta's voice trembled. "Is this a trap?" she asked. Emma replied, "It might be." Jonas's voice came from behind. "Keep moving," he said. "We have no choice." They walked through the square. They passed the stalls. They passed the empty carts. They passed the silent animals. They reached the old church. The church was dark. The church doors were open. The church doors were inviting, but the inside was cold. The inside was empty, but the air was heavy. Emma's heart raced. She walked inside. She saw the altar. She saw the candles. She saw the cross. But something was wrong. The cross was not alone. There were symbols. Symbols that looked like numbers. Symbols that looked like codes. Emma recognized them. She had seen them in her notebook. She had seen them in the pattern. She whispered, "This is their mark." Henrik's voice dropped. "What does it mean?" he asked. Emma replied, "It means they are here. It means they control this place. It means they are watching." Greta gasped. She whispered, "What do we do?" Emma looked at her parents. She said, "We gather proof. We take pictures. We take notes. We record the symbols." Henrik asked, "But how?" Emma replied, "We do it quickly. We do it quietly. We do it before they notice." They moved toward the altar. Emma lifted her skirt slightly. She reached into her pocket. She took out a small notebook. She began to sketch the symbols. Henrik pulled out a piece of paper. He began to write. Greta took out a small pencil. She began to draw. They worked quickly. They worked silently. They worked with fear. Then a sound, a footstep, a voice, a whisper. They froze. The door creaked. A man entered. He wore a dark coat. His face was hidden. His eyes were cold. He looked at Emma. He said, "You shouldn't be here." Emma's voice was calm. "We are just visitors," she said. The man smiled. He said, "Visitors don't come here. Not at night. Not alone." He stepped closer. Emma's heart pounded. She looked at her parents. She whispered, "Run." Henrik grabbed Greta's hand. They turned to leave, but the man moved faster. He blocked the door. Emma stepped forward. She held her notebook tight. She said, "You can't stop the truth." The man laughed. He said, "The truth belongs to us. You don't get to decide." Emma's eyes hardened. She whispered, "Then I will." The man's smile faded. He raised his hand, and the room went dark.
The darkness was sudden. It swallowed the church. The candle flames died. The air went cold. Emma felt the fear. Her body froze. Her mind raced. The man stepped closer. His footsteps echoed. He smelled like smoke. He smelled like power. He spoke softly. "You shouldn't have come." Emma's voice was quiet. "We came for the truth." The man laughed. "The truth is mine," he said. "It belongs to the network." Henrik's voice shook. "What do you want?" he asked. The man paused. He said,
I want your notebook. Emma tightened her grip. No, she said. The man's eyes narrowed. He said, you don't understand. You have no idea what you're holding. Emma looked at him. She said, I know. I know what it means. The man stepped closer. He raised his hand. Emma saw his fingers. They were stained with ink, stained with blood. Henrik swallowed. He whispered, they've been here before. The man smiled. He said, yes, they have been here many times. They have been here for years. They have been here since the beginning. Greta whispered, who are you? The man paused. He said, I am the one who keeps the silence. Emma's eyes widened. She asked, the one who keeps the silence? The man nodded. He said, yes, I am the one who decides what is remembered, what is forgotten, what is hidden. Emma's voice was steady. You're lying. The man's smile faded. He said, am I? He stepped closer. He said, you think you can expose us? You think you can break the chain? You think you can destroy the web? Emma's voice was calm. I don't think, she said. I know. The man's voice became cold. You don't know anything, he said. You are just a girl. You are just a child. Emma looked at him. Her eyes were fierce. She said, I am not a child. I am a mind. I am a weapon. The man's face twisted. He said, then show me. He raised his hand. The room filled with light. The candles lit again. The shadows retreated. Emma saw something. She saw the man clearly. His face was old. His eyes were dead. His expression was empty. He looked like a man who had lost everything. Emma saw his ring, a symbol on the ring, a mark she recognized. She whispered, the mark of the network. The man's smile returned. He said, you see, you know too much. You must be stopped. Henrik stepped forward. He said, we will not give you the notebook. The man's voice sharpened. He said, then you will die. Greta screamed. Emma grabbed her mother. She pulled her behind the altar. She whispered, stay behind me. The man moved closer. He raised his hand again. Emma's mind raced. She searched the notebook. She searched for a pattern. She searched for a solution. She found it. A page she had not seen before. A page she had missed. A page that changed everything. Emma's eyes widened. She whispered, this is it. Henrik asked, what is it? Emma replied, it's the key to the pattern, the key to the network, the key to their secrets. The man's voice grew louder. He said, what are you talking about? Emma stood up. She held the notebook high. She said, this notebook is not just numbers. It's not just patterns. It's a map. It's a map of their world. It's a map of their power. The man stepped back. He looked afraid. Emma continued. She said, I can trace them. I can expose them. I can prove they exist. The man whispered, no. He took a step forward. He reached for her. Emma moved quickly. She threw the notebook to the ground. She shouted, run! Henrik grabbed Greta. They ran toward the door, but the man was faster. He grabbed Henrik. He held him. He pressed his hand against Henrik's throat. Henrik gasped. Greta screamed. Emma turned. She saw the man holding her father. She saw her father struggling. She felt the anger rise. Emma's voice was sharp. Let him go, she said. The man laughed. You cannot stop me. Emma's eyes burned. She said, I already have. Emma reached into her pocket. She pulled out a piece of paper. She had written it earlier. A code, a pattern, a number. She threw it at the man. The paper hit him. He froze. His face went blank. He stumbled backward. His grip loosened. Henrik fell to the ground. Greta ran to him. Emma stood tall.
The man looked at her. His eyes were wide. He whispered, "How did you do that?" Emma replied, "I didn't do it. I let the pattern do it." The man's face twisted. He said, "No." He tried to move, but he couldn't. The paper had stopped him. He was trapped. The room filled with a strange silence. Emma looked at the man. She said, "The pattern controls them. The pattern controls their fear. The pattern controls their actions." The man struggled. He whispered, "You don't understand." Emma's voice was calm. "I understand enough," she said. "I understand that you are afraid." The man's eyes widened. He whispered, "You don't know what you've done." Emma's voice was quiet. "I do," she said, "and so will everyone else." The man's face turned pale. He screamed. The scream echoed through the church. It echoed through the market. It echoed through the night. And somewhere far away, the network heard it. They knew the pattern was breaking. They knew the web was cracking. They knew the truth was rising.
The scream faded. The church fell silent. The candles flickered again. The shadows returned. Emma stood still. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. Her mind was racing. Hinrich sat on the floor. He held his throat. He coughed. He breathed hard. Greta stayed close to him. She whispered, "Are you okay?" Hinrich nodded slowly, but his eyes were wide. He looked terrified. Emma looked at the man. He was still trapped. He was frozen. He was unable to move. His eyes stared at her. He looked like a statue. His face was full of fear. Emma realized something. The pattern didn't just predict. It could control. It could stop. It could freeze. It could trap. She looked at the notebook. She realized the power was greater than she imagined. She realized she was more dangerous than she thought. She realized the network was not just a group. It was a system, a machine, a living organism, and she had found the switch. Emma looked at her parents. She said, "We need to leave now." Hinrich asked, "Where do we go?" Emma replied, "We go to the winter market." Greta gasped. "Again?" she asked. Emma nodded. "We go back," she said. "We go back and we expose them." Hinrich's voice was quiet. "You want to go back into danger?" he asked. Emma looked at him. She said, "Yes, because the danger is already here, and hiding won't stop it." Dr. Mueller's voice echoed behind them. He had been silent. He stepped forward. He said, "She is right. We must go back. We must expose them." Hinrich's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" he asked. Dr. Mueller nodded. "We have no choice," he said. "We have the proof. We have the evidence. We have the pattern. We have the key." Emma looked at the trapped man. She said, "We should take him." Greta shook her head. "No," she said. "He will follow us. He will lead them to us." Emma nodded. She said, "Then we must destroy him." Hinrich whispered, "Destroy him?" Emma's eyes hardened. "We must make sure he can't warn them," she said. Dr. Mueller's voice was heavy. "That is dangerous," he said. "It is not just killing. It is erasing. It is becoming what we hate." Emma's voice was quiet. "I know," she said, "but if we don't, they will find us." They stood in the church. The trapped man stared at them. His eyes were filled with terror. Emma felt the weight of the decision. She felt the cost. She felt the fear. She looked at her parents. She looked at Dr. Mueller. She looked at the notebook. She whispered, "We must do it." Dr. Mueller nodded. He stepped closer. He took the man's ring. He broke it. The symbol shattered. The trapped man's eyes widened. He screamed again. The room shook.
The man fell to the floor. He lay still. The silence returned. Emma felt sick. She felt the guilt. She felt the power. She realized she had crossed a line. She realized the pattern had changed her. She realized she was no longer just a girl. She was part of the machine. She was part of the network. She was part of the silence. Hinrich looked at Emma. He said, "What have we become?" Emma's voice was quiet. "We have become survivors, and survivors do what they must." Greta whispered, "But at what cost?" Emma didn't answer. She looked at the notebook. She opened it. She traced the lines. She traced the patterns. She realized the network would respond. She realized the network would strike back. She realized the winter market would be more dangerous than ever. She realized the web was tightening. She realized the night was not over. They left the church. They walked through the snow. They moved quickly. They moved silently. They reached the market road. The market was still quiet, but the air felt heavier. The silence felt louder. They moved toward the center. They reached the market square. The stalls were closed, but the shadows were moving. They were watching. They were waiting. Emma whispered, "They know we are here." Hinrich whispered, "Then we must be faster." Dr. Mueller nodded. He said, "We go now." They moved into the market. They passed the stalls. They passed the carts. They passed the empty stalls. The wind blew. The snow swirled. And in the distance a bell rang. A warning bell. A signal. The network had been alerted. The chase had begun.
The bell rang again. This time it echoed through the whole market. The shadows moved faster. The air became electric. Emma's heart raced. Hinrich held her hand. Greta clung to him. Dr. Mueller looked around. He whispered, "They are coming." Emma nodded. She looked at the notebook. She knew the pattern. She knew the path. She knew the trap. They reached the center of the market. A large stall stood there. It was covered with cloth. It looked like a stage. It looked like a courtroom. Emma knew this place. She had seen it in the notebook. She had seen it in the pattern. She knew the network used it. She knew the network used it to control. She knew the network used it to punish. The cloth was pulled away. A man stood behind it. His face was hidden. His voice was deep. He said, "You have returned." Emma stepped forward. She said, "We are not afraid." The man laughed. He said, "Fear is already inside you." Emma's eyes narrowed. She said, "Fear is what you use to control people." The man's voice grew darker. He said, "And you think you can break it." Emma's voice was calm. "I know I can," she said. The man stepped closer. He removed his hood. Emma gasped. She saw his face. It was familiar. It was the priest who had spoken to her father, the priest who had visited their home, the priest who had been kind, the priest who had been trusted. Emma's stomach dropped. She whispered, "You." The priest smiled. He said, "Yes, I have been watching you. I have been waiting. I have been listening." He stepped closer. He said, "You are not the first." Emma's voice shook. "What do you mean?" she asked. The priest's smile widened. He said, "There have been others like you, others with gifts, others with patterns, others who tried to expose us." Emma's eyes widened. She asked, "What happened to them?" The priest's voice became soft. He said, "They disappeared. They were broken. They were erased." He paused. He said, "But you are different." Emma's voice was steady. "How?" she asked. The priest's eyes narrowed. He said, "Because you are not afraid."
Emma's heart pounded. She looked at her parents. She looked at Dr. Mueller. She looked at the crowd. The crowd was hidden in the shadows. The crowd was silent. The crowd was waiting. Emma realized the truth. The network did not need to kill her. They only needed to make her disappear. They only needed to make her a myth. They only needed to make her silence. Emma lifted her notebook. She opened it. She showed the pages. She said, "This is the truth." The priest laughed. He said, "The truth is what we decide." Emma's voice was firm. "No," she said, "the truth is what we find." The priest's voice became angry. He said, "Then you will be punished." Emma looked at the crowd. She said, "You can punish me, but you cannot stop the truth." The priest raised his hand. The shadows moved. The crowd stepped forward. They surrounded them. Heinrich stepped forward. He shouted, "Let her go!" The crowd did not move. They did not flinch. They were controlled. They were silent. They were obedient. Dr. Mueller whispered, "The pattern." Emma's eyes narrowed. She understood. The network controlled people with fear, but fear was a pattern too. Emma flipped through the notebook. She found the page that showed the control, the page that showed the fear. She read the numbers. She read the lines. She spoke softly. "Listen," she said. The crowd froze. The priest's eyes widened. Emma continued. She spoke the pattern. She spoke the code. She spoke the numbers. She spoke the truth. The crowd began to tremble. The shadows shook. The fear in the air weakened. The priest's face turned pale. He shouted, "Stop her!" But it was too late. The pattern had been broken. The crowd began to wake. They began to remember. They began to see. The shadows dissolved. The network's control shattered. The priest screamed. He tried to run, but the crowd stopped him. They grabbed him. They pulled him down. They tore his hood. They revealed his face. They revealed the truth. The crowd began to shout. They began to cry. They began to scream. The network was exposed. The winter market fell silent. The snow began to fall harder. The wind roared. The night grew colder. Emma stood in the center. She held the notebook. She looked at her parents. She looked at Dr. Mueller. She looked at the crowd. She whispered, "We did it." Heinrich's voice was quiet. "We did," he said. Greta's voice shook. "But at what cost?" Emma looked at the notebook. She looked at the pages. She realized the truth. The pattern was not just a tool. It was a responsibility. She realized the network would rebuild. She realized the web would return. She realized the silence would come again. Emma closed the notebook. She looked at the crowd. She said, "This is not the end. This is only the beginning." The crowd nodded. They began to move. They began to leave. Emma turned to her parents. She said, "We must keep moving." Heinrich asked, "Where?" Emma replied, "Anywhere but here." Dr. Mueller nodded. He said, "We will disappear again, but this time we will be ready." They walked away. They disappeared into the snow. The winter market faded behind them. The night swallowed them. The silence returned, but the truth remained. And somewhere in the dark, the network began to rebuild. They would return. They would try again. They would hunt again. But now the pattern was known. Now the truth had been spoken, and the silence had been broken.
Do you think Emma was born with her gift, or did she discover it? And do you believe the network will return stronger than before? Comment below with your thoughts and tell us where you're watching from. If this story kept you on edge, hit like, subscribe, and share. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next dark historical mystery.